The India Today and the TV Today group were the first to bring you exclusive details of the then Prime Minister Nehru snooping on Netaji's skin. We now bring you exclusive details from classified Netaji files. Secret government confidential classified documents reveal the disappearance of a fortune, a massive fortune collected by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to aid his fight, his armed struggle. The Nehru government was alerted about this missing war chest, which is a treasure, but chose to look the other way.
We are confident that India shall be free. We are confident that Anglo-American imperialism will be wiped out of India.
His charisma and his cause made him a hero for many. Till date, many continue to question Netaji's purported demise in the Taiwan plane crash in 1945. What few know is that is simply one of the mysteries that got buried in the Taiwan crash. India Today accesses top secret Netaji files, brings to you details of another burning mystery surrounding Netaji, that of the considerable INA treasure and what really happened to it. Here's what the top secret files reveal. When retreating from Rangoon, headquarters of the Azad Hind Bank, Netaji carried with him the entire INA war chest. He travelled by road till Singapore, stayed there for a couple of months and then flew to Saigon via Bangkok along with the entire treasure. The INA booty included over 63.5 kgs of gold donated by Indians in the Far East. Netaji left a large part of this treasure in Saigon and journeyed towards his final flight from Taiwan, which crashed. Also destroyed in the aircraft were 2 leather attaches, each 18 inches long, packed with the meager INA gold that Netaji did carry with him. But the story does not end here. The classified files reveal that the then Nehru government was repeatedly warned by top diplomats in Tokyo that the Netaji treasure had been siphoned off by none other than his close aides. One A. Iyer, publicity minister in the Azad Hind government, and M. Ramamurthy, former president of the Indian Independence League in Tokyo, were suspected by many to have embezzled the bulk of INA treasure. But Nehru ignored all warnings and instead of initiating an inquiry, went on to reward the suspected conspirators. In fact, in March 1952, PM Nehru read out a message from Iyer in Parliament affirming Netaji's death in the Taiwan crash. The entire sordid saga can be summed up in just a few lines. The once vast INA treasure, worth several hundred crores today, was purportedly siphoned off by Netaji's own aides, even as an unsympathetic government in New Delhi looked the other way. Of the huge INA war chest, comprising gold jewellery and coins weighing nearly 65 kgs, only 11 kgs was brought back to India from Japan in 4 packages in 1952. This was what was recovered from the Taiwan plane crash. The charred remains of the meager treasure sealed and stored in the vaults of the National Museum in Delhi for the last 62 years.
हिंदुस्तान अब गुलाम नहीं रह सकता और न कोई ताकत इसे गुलाम रखी सकती है.
Observers calling the disappearance of the INA treasure pre-India's first scam. With Sandeep Unithan, this is Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
What was this war chest by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose? What did it comprise of? It comprised of donations given to Netaji for an armed struggle of the INA. Why are we calling it a treasure? Well, the reason why the valuation of it that time was 1 crore rupees. In today's days, it's anything over 700 crore rupees. I want to bring in at this point of time Sandeep Unithan. He's deputy editor, India Today. He's been able to access this classified information, secret documents with the government, which goes on to suggest that Netaji, on his way from Rangoon, on his way in Saigon, left a sizable amount of this treasure, 80% of that treasure, and we're going to show you that map there, when he was retreating from Rangoon, where the headquarters of the INA was. On his way, he left in Saigon most of the war chest, most of the gold there. He left it there and then took that alleged fatal aircraft, that flight on which he allegedly died. I want to bring in Sandeep, who will simplify the story for us. Sandeep, you know, there's a lot of viewer interest in this treasure of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and what actually happened to it.
Right. When Netaji began his fund collection drive, I mean, he was very clear in his mind that he did not want to depend on the Japanese for funding the Indian National Army, because he believed he was just months away from crossing the border and recapturing territories in the northeast, and which they actually did. Now, a lot of this was donations from Indians who were settled in Southeast Asia. There was something like 300,000 Indians all over Southeast Asia, and we have accounts which suggest that every time Netaji spoke, women would actually come up and take their jewelry off and give it to him, offer it to him, and he would actually auction off garlands. And he was very, very adept at fundraising. I mean, he's a deeply charismatic speaker, very, very charismatic. He was a great speaker, great orator. I mean, he had the ability to captivate large audiences, and they would do what he wanted. So he would, ask them for funds even. And you have examples, these are all documented, of businessmen coming and donating entire fortunes to Netaji. And by 1945, a lot of the INA had begun its retreat into Thailand and further south into Singapore. The Axis powers, Japan, had begun to lose the war. So Netaji he wanted to use this fortune to fund the next phase of his freedom movement. He believed he believed that he could actually go to the Soviet Union and restart this freedom movement. I mean, he was far-sighted enough to see that there's a likely division. So he left a
sizable amount of that. 80% of this treasure was left in Saigon, which today is Ho Chi Minh City. He allegedly took that flight and he died in that flight, where all he had of that treasure, the war chest, was just 2 attaches of gold.
That's right.
That was all.
Yeah, because in Saigon, I mean, this is again comes from the papers that we have, the secret government papers that we have, which say that there was a problem getting on the aircraft. He had to change planes in Saigon, and he came with his entourage, numbering a dozen people. But when he had to change planes, there was just 2 seats available. In fact, just 1 seat, and he insisted that his aide accompany him. And he had to leave a substantial portion of that treasure behind in the safe custody of certain people of the INA in Saigon.
Who betrayed him, apparently?
Well, now it emerges that one of the people who was there, Mr. Iyer, in Saigon, he was a minister in the Azad Hind government. I mean, this is again there in the documents. One of the people, Mr. Iyer, who was in Saigon with him, was later to follow Netaji to Tokyo, which he did a few days later. And after the crash, we have, there's almost like a blackout. There is no information what happened.
And repeatedly, the then political dispensation repeatedly was told that they should order a public inquiry. That political dispensation at that time was headed by Pandit Nehru. Repeatedly, many whistleblowers came out and suggested to him that he order a public inquiry as to know who embezzled that money, that sizable fortune, to the tune of 1 crore rupees at that time. So one can imagine what that would tantamount to in today's times. So who embezzled it? But no public investigation was ordered for some strange reason by the then political dispensation.
That's right. It's one of the most remarkable cases, because we have I've shown these papers to certain MEA retired diplomats, and they were astonished. I mean, they didn't know about these files to begin with, but when they read through it, they were surprised that the government had not even thought it fit to order an inquiry. And this is what has been asked of by successive diplomats, 3 and 4 of them, and they're literally begging the government in New Delhi to order an inquiry. I mean, you're doing disservice to a freedom fighter. The last diplomat who writes this letter says you're doing disservice to the memory of a freedom fighter if you don't try to find out what happened to this treasure.
And this is classified information, and there's a reason why especially the family of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose want this classified information to become public, because what we are able to access is explosive. Sandeep Punithan has been able to access these documents and explosive material that I want to bring in right now. Chandra Bose, he's the great-grandnephew of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He's joining me on the phone line from Kolkata. Appreciate you joining us, Mr. Bose. Earlier on, Mr. Bose, classified information that the kin of Netaji were being snooped on, and now this latest issue of the war chest, which is a sizable treasure being left by Subhash Chandra Bose in Saigon, which is Ho Chi Minh City today. But the then dispensation didn't think it worthwhile to order a public investigation on what exactly happened to that money, who siphoned off that money.
Absolutely. You see, it comes to Subhash Chandra Bose, anything to do with the Azad Hind government and Subhash Chandra Bose, there has always been a concerted effort on the part of the government, subsequent Congress governments, to suppress facts. Suppression had become the normal practice of the government's era. Now, regarding the INA treasure, it is a very shameful act.
Right.
See, people, thousands of people had donated practically everything they had to the freedom movement, to the Azad Hind government, so that the Indian National Army can fight for the final onslaught on the British imperialism was
right.
actually by the INA, by the Indian National Army. And their treasure was basically to fight for the freedom of the nation.
Yes.
So that treasure belongs to the nation. It belongs to the people of the country. It does not belong to the Bose family or any individual or any INA officers. It belongs to the nation. Now, we understand that part of that treasure had been brought to India and it disappeared. Now, don't you think it is the responsibility of the government to find out what happened to the treasure? This, I think, was India's first biggest scam in independent India. Now, it is the responsibility of the NDA government.
Right.
You see, previous governments have failed. They have failed the nation. It is a betrayal of the nation. It is
Right.
not a betrayal to Subhash Chandra Bose or the Bose family or
Right.
any individual. It is betrayal that the Congress government has betrayed the nation. So now I think it is the responsibility of the present government,
Right.
the NDA government, to disclose the truth, to declassify all secret files, all classified files, so that the truth on Subhash Bose's disappearance on
Right.
18th August 1945 is unraveled, the mystery is unraveled, the INA treasure loot, the INA treasure that was looted
Right.
by certain individuals, that comes to the open. See, we are not in the business to blame anyone. But
Yes.
if evidence is there to prove that certain people in high places
Right.
looted the money, then that issue has to be in the open.
Well,
In
it
an
is
era
there.
of
Mr.
right to
Bose, that's
information, the people have a right to know.
Right. And Mr. Bose, the people have a right to know. Most at this point would think that this is the biggest disservice. It is a betrayal. It is an insult to the freedom struggle, because that money was given in the hope to aid a freedom struggle carried on by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And as Sandeep has accessed this classified information, he's with me right now, and it does go on to suggest that there are names there, actual names given by whistleblowers, which goes on to suggest close aid of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose at that point of time, which go on to suggest that these were the people who actually embezzled that war chest of the INA of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Are you a little cynical because those very names later on were rewarded by the Nehru regime?
See, if there were certain traitors, there were certain traitors in the Indian National Army as well. They should be exposed. I mean, they did fight for the freedom of the country, but subsequently they were traitors and they were rewarded. They were rewarded by the Nehru government. Now, if such people cannot be, we cannot suppress the truth. So let the nation know who were the traitors. We know Rammurthy and Iyer's name are coming up, but I think we need conclusive evidence. You see, we cannot have partial evidence. Let conclusive evidence be provided by the government of India today by declassifying 130
Right.
files which are there with the central government, 64 files which are there with the West Bengal government,
Right.
and also the files which are there in the erstwhile KGB archives. You see, we have to have
Yes.
a very holistic approach.
Right.
Let the international files which are there with the Russian authorities, with the Chinese
Right.
authorities, with Japan, with Germany and the CIA files. Let
Right.
all these be files simultaneously be
Yes.
declassified.
All
that
right.
the
Right, Mr. Bose, appreciate you joining us, sir. We are hoping that you'll join us at the top of 7 p.m. as well as we carry on our coverage on this story, this exclusive brought forth by India Today Deputy Editor Sandeep Unnithan, where he's been able to access classified information, which goes on to suggest that the war chest, the treasure of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was in Saigon, and the government at that time could have done something, maybe order a public inquiry, but did absolutely nothing in that case.